Welcome to this week's edition of the Racing Room. It is three of us, one disappeared, Ronan Groom. I have no idea where he is. Does anybody know where Ronan is? Tony, I think you might have been dealing with this week. Is he just unavailable?
No, unavailable. He could have done this evening, but we're early birds, so we had to go without him.
He must have a life, so unavailable on the Monday morning. Fair play to him. It's just us three then, aka myself, Mr. Tony Calvin, and everybody's favourite lawyer and punters champion, Harry Stewart Moore. How are you?
Oh, punters champion, yeah.
How's it going, lads? All good?
All good.
Very good.
All good. How are things with you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Busy week. It was in New York for most of the week. And
oh, yeah. That was exciting.
A bit jet-lagged. But yeah, all good. Can't complain.
This is for your wife's 40th. I love that you managed to get her all the way to New York. And then the one photo we got was from you at a basketball game. What a lucky woman she is.
She's very lucky. She loves the basketball, in fairness.
Oh, does she?
Celebrity Rose. She loves having a gallop at people for some reason. But
I see.
Wouldn't appeal to me now. But yeah, no, it was good. I found it quite funny, actually, that England or Scotland, one of them must be playing a game in New York in that World Cup, and somebody wrote an article about the cost of hotels, and they're going up to as much as 500 quid for a room, and I was like, fucking hell, it's a good job they weren't. Still don't see the bill for the missus's 40th anyway.
Yeah,
so it's slightly more expensive than that, but all good. What have you been up to? Anyone up to anything?
Dying of a cough, yeah. But yeah.
Right.
Is that expensive trip to New York? Is that why you're selling your Cheltenham and Royal Ascot pictures, AK?
Oh, what a fantastic transition there, Tony. That was very impressive. Yeah.
You got that in so well. Fair play, Tony. That was seamless. That's all going good. I think there's a couple of weeks left, maybe 12 days left on those pitches. We've 100k reserve on Ascot and 150 on Cheltenham. They both should make that. I think the Ascot pitch on the auction site's up to 70 grand at the moment, and Cheltenham I think is 60, but I've had a private offer of 125, so and even that won't be enough, to be honest. So it's going all right. We'll see how we go anyway. All good there.
Yeah, we had a question from Ben Keefe on the relax. We'll do that here rather than the question section. From Button, he said, why does Anthony prefer betting in the Irish betting ring to the UK one? What is the difference that suits his approach?
There's
not travelling?
Yeah, there's no real difference, to be honest with you. The approach is just the same. We don't tailor an approach for different jurisdictions now. It's a time thing. It's a little bit more of a time thing for us. I love Cheltenham. I'd half be happy if I'm more a National Hunt fan than a flat racing fan, to be honest with you. So I like being at Cheltenham. It's a good chance for me to get away for a few days and actually work, inverted commas, and actually do something I want to do as well. Royal Ascot, for me personally, I'm just not as into flat racing personally, and especially not as into dressing up, I suppose, as well. And it was 6 days, basically, 6 days away from home, I suppose. And I always remember when I got my license out and bought a few pitches. Peter McGrain, who I bought a good few pictures off in the early days, his wife said to me, "Oh, you're going to buy a good few more pictures, and you'll have to get used to missing birthdays and missing weddings and doing this." And I in my head, and I was just like, "I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to miss this stuff." And I suppose as I get a bit older, 6 days away in the height of summer, away from the kids it's probably less appealing now to me. And a few things have changed just with our racecourse operation, I suppose, just circumstances of some of the team and stuff like that. So international travel is less appealing, I suppose. But no difference in approach. Still try and grind out money the way we do it in both countries, really.
Right. Just two other questions, staged questions before we move. What's all this about Apple Pay?
Oh yeah, Apple Pay. We have Apple Pay now on the site. You can just deposit by Apple Pay. It's very, very popular. Obviously, it's what I use, I suppose, to buy my coffees from around the corner from the office, and it's just a seamless way to deposit and something we've added to the site, Tony.
Right,
and the only other thing is, opened an account with us, but
I'm a bit worried we're not recording. Can you double check your end, please?
We are recording.
Yeah,
Right, don't worry,
100%.
we don't have to start again.
Good.
I can't listen to that again, so I'm very pleased to hear
I'm amazed you listen.
well, that's a good point, but yeah.
You just can see him dazing away in court there, Harry.
Not in court. In court, I have less room for manoeuvre on that front.
Very good. Good stuff. Next part is the racing review, I suppose. Now, everybody's in for a treat here. It's not just a Saturday, Sunday. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Fire away, Mr. Calvin.
Yeah, well, I'll deal with this very quickly. Right, Friday. No drama descent. One on the bridle at Sandown at 4-9. Time signed in the Times, wins at 4-9 and slashed in half for the Turners, 6s into 12s. So that's a bit of Cheltenham news, and that was good news for Paul Nicholls. So that's if he's holding out for a hero, that looks to be the most likely one for Cheltenham. Gary and Josh Moore had a really good Friday and Saturday. Had a couple of really impressive winners with Macto, the juvenile, and novice chaser Salva. And the big betting story of Friday, Racing TV showed the wrong winning post in the Sandown photo. And the head winner traded at big odds as a result. And the last traded price on the second was apparently 1.16. Apparently went as low as 10s on because there's two winning posts at Sandown and Racing TV showed the wrong one. So I know it's kind of like people have to take responsibility for their own betting, but that's a bit of a boo-boo by Racing TV. I'm not sure if they owned it and apologised live on air, but a few people were a bit scathing about that. On to Saturday, Lulamba was into 11-4 for the Arkle after winning the Henry VIII novice chase. Very impressive. And in the Tingle Creek, highlight of the Saturday, Ilete Tomps gagged up to confirm he's one of the leading contenders for the champion chase, despite a modest Cheltenham record to date. And there was some decent racing on Sunday for once. Jello won back-to-back Peterborough chases. As the main market rival, St Sam ran dismally. That was cut to single figures for the King George in places. I'm not sure how strong a 5-length defeat of an 11-year-old is, but yeah, that's again, that's the way of the betting
I was going
season.
to ask how old St Sam is, to be honest with you. St Sam seems to have been around a while.
Yeah, it was. I think he ended up being pulled up, and that was the main market rival. And like I said, if you're beating an 11-year-old, even giving it weight, it's probably not a massive pointer to his Kempton charts, but I think he's as low as 8s. In the Hilly Way, the race fit found a 50, beat Madgeborough, odds on shot. Jumped really poorly, so I don't know where they're going to go with that now. And the only other meaningful race of the day was Carla Conti beat Cargess by 16 lengths in the Mares Chase. So a good weekend of racing. We've got a question on the lack of field sizes in the question section, so I'll deal with that there. But yeah, that's the racing review.
Very good. Thanks a lot for that. And we'll bend straight into the topics. And there's probably one that's caught the eye of a few people this week, known on our running order as the Tony Bloom case. And then we've got the subheading is Big Deal or Common Knowledge or both. So the background to the story, broken by our favourite ambulance chaser, is George Cottrell, a close associate of Nigel Farage and a key figure in Reform UK's inner circle, acted as a front for a major gambling syndicate that was given control, inverted commas, of his betting accounts, a High Court document alleges. It's in relation, obviously, to Tony Bloom, who is a billionaire and majority shareholder and chair of Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. It's claimed he used whales or frontmen to assist in gambling enterprises, the details of which are set out in a 19-page document filed to the High Court. It's a dispute between Bloom and a former associate of his by the name of Ryan Dudfield, who lawyers claim is owed his share of gambling profits. Estimated the profits are in the region of $250 million, which equates to 189 million sterling in the present day. The collective, known as the Star Lizard Betting Syndicate, makes about 600 million sterling each year in winnings, the document alleges. So before I go any further, I'm just going to go like this to Tony Bloom. Absolute fucking, sorry, I need to stop swearing. Absolute hero, Tony Bloom. And then there was a follow up from Rob Davis, and then a statement from Mr. Bloom, Mr. Bloom's lawyer, I assume, which I will pull up now. Following an inaccurate and misleading report in The Guardian earlier this evening, I'm shocked, by the way, by inaccuracies in The Guardian regarding alleged inaccuracies from The Guardian journalist in relation to gambling there, but we'll proceed with the statement. I can categorically assure our supporters that I've not placed any bets on Brighton and Hove Albion matches since becoming the owner of the club in 2009. In 2014, in addition to new rules on betting, the FA introduced a policy with quite onerous provisions for owners of football clubs with interests in betting. These provisions allow certain football club owners, including me, to continue to bet on football under strict conditions. In particular, the policy prevents me from betting on any match or competition that involves Brighton and Hove Albion. Since 2014, I have always fully complied with these conditions, and all of my bets on football are audited by one of the world's leading accounting firms on an annual basis to ensure full compliance with the FA's policy. Lawyers acting on my behalf have this evening directly contacted The Guardian to make my position on this entirely false allegation very clear. Separately, our club is in direct contact with both the FA and Premier League regarding this matter. I think the matter probably accelerated even a notch further, with The Guardian being banned from Brighton's home match with West Ham on Sunday. Interested to know your thoughts, I suppose, guys, on this story. It's quite a big one. Yeah, fire away with what we can say, I suppose.
Well, no, that was very thorough, AK. It appears that what's happened is that a claim has been issued in the High Court, and what has gone in so far are what's called the particulars of claim, which is what sets out the sort of basic structure of the claim. It doesn't have evidence in it, and what you then get is a defence from the defendant, which responds to each paragraph of the particulars of claim, and that doesn't appear to have been filed yet. So it's really important to point out that we've only got one side of this story at the moment on the court documents, which is the claimant side. As you say, Tony Bloom is denying any breaches of FA rules, which would be betting on matches in competitions involving Brighton. And the question really becomes: does the claimant Ryan Dubfield have a claim for what appears essentially to be a commission, an introductory fee for introducing George Cottrell and Tony Bloom? It will come as no surprise to anyone listening to this, although it appears to have come as an astonishing surprise to the authors of the various pieces in The Guardian, that there are no accounts with T Bloom at the top of them at Bet365, where he's able to put on 100 million quid. It is a world where they have to get on in different ways, and that is a lot of the skill. You talk to a lot of punters for a long time, they've said that finding the winners is the easy bit. It's getting the bets on, and that's now a really complicated international Bitcoin flavored ecosystem, to use AK's favorite phrase, and it is not one that anyone's particularly going to want to come under the spotlight. And we will see where it goes from there. I think that what is unfortunate is that a few of the usual suspects are jumping out to say that this is, yet more of an example of, the harms done by gambling. As things stand, it's a 19-page document that hasn't been responded to by a defendant who's yet to have been found to have done anything wrong and may well not be found to have done anything wrong. I'm talking about civilly or indeed criminally. So there's an awful, if this carries on, there are an awful lot of twists and turns. But I pity the judge, frankly, if this gets to a trial, to trying to work out what's gone on here in terms of, the international element, Stake.com's involvement, who appear to be the bookmaker, in inverted commas, who had the bets placed with them, whether they were licensed at the time, where the bets were placed, where the country that the person was in when they placed the bets. It appears that the allegation is that Cottrell handed over the login details rather than operated his accounts himself. I mean, we'll all know that's a huge breach of the terms and conditions of any bookmaker that we've ever come across. But it all becomes a bit murkier when you're dealing with these kind of intranational bookmakers who deal in crypto, and you know, whether their terms and conditions are God only knows what. But yes, the Tony Bloom banned the Guardian's journalists from the Amex yesterday, and he appears to have written personally in his personal capacity, suggesting that he thinks he may have been defamed with these allegations regarding placing bets. And I think it probably would be defamatory to accuse someone of breaching, you know, the owner of a football club for purposefully breaching FA rules. Then we had our favourite anti-gambling person, Ian Duncan Smith, that decided to jump in and say that the FA need to be more transparent. I love this. Read their lax policy concerning the use of gambling money in the running of clubs. I mean, has he heard of Newcastle United? I mean, it is quite astonishing that he thinks that the clubs that are the problem are the ones run by successful gamblers. But he appears, yeah, I mean, perhaps he said things about Newcastle as well, but it does seem completely extraordinary to take issue with the idea that punters who have made a lot of money are able to run football clubs, but there is not a gambling bandwagon that he is not prepared to
Literally the most
jump
successful
on.
club I can think of as well.
Yeah,
smart decisions. Like it's
yeah, absolutely employs lots of people. You know, I mean, it you know, the Star Lizard now runs an integrity service, as far as I'm aware, for various
right.
various sports leagues. So it will be very sensitive and embarrassing for them, this, as a result of that, because they have, you know, moved into that world. So they'll be very unhappy with the whole thing. But that's not to say that there's anything to this claim. We simply don't know. We'll find out more if and when a defence is filed, I think.
Fair enough.
The one thing that appeared to me when we were at the Smart Bash gig in the summer, you made reference to third-party betting and the increasing fallout from that if it's proven. Now, would the bookmakers in this case, who black market bookmakers or whatever, if they lost a lot of money to someone that wasn't who they thought it was, would they have any recourse to trying to get that money back here?
I mean, it massively depends on the terms and conditions of the bookmaker and whether they're licensed, for example. So this has got, what I'm about to say has got nothing to do with this case, but there is a principle in English law that you cannot benefit from a criminal enterprise. And I'm not for a moment suggesting, I want to be very careful to suggesting anything like that has happened here. There's no reason to believe there has. But if you are purposefully misleading people in any line of work in order to make a profit, you are in danger of committing a fraud offence. And while it is not, there's a Supreme Court case called Patel and Mirza, which says that it's the most recent case on illegality, which says that there is a two-stage test to this, which is the courts decide if the underlying contract is tainted by illegality. Then the sort of presumption is that the courts just say, well, we're not getting involved. You know, if the parties have done something that is illegal, we're not getting involved. And then there's a second rung, which is unless there's a good policy reason to get involved in this instance. So that is the danger and again, I hate to add, we've moved on to third-party accounting now. That is always the danger, I think, that faces people who are placing bets sort of on a kind of commercial basis. You know, it is always going to be different when you're just having a tenner on for a mate because you've got your Bet365 account open on your phone and they haven't. No one's going to get excitable about that. But if it becomes sort of a commercial, then I think that people are in danger of criminal offences with third-party accounting, and that certainly, as I think I've said recently, various police forces are getting more interested in that, although they do get quite confused by it and tend to jumble it up with other issues. So yeah, third-party accounting, as I've said for a very long time, is not a good idea. This is a different. I mean, that's not. We're not talking here with the Tony Bloom case, as far as we're aware of that nature. We don't know what all the parties knew. We don't know what the arrangements were. We don't know whether the people they were placing the bets with made it clear that they wouldn't accept bets from, people. And it all, at this level, at this kind of huge level, and when you're dealing with these bookmakers who sort of exist, as I say, kind of in the ether to an extent, and when you're dealing with Bitcoin, I just think probably different rules apply.
Yeah, for me, just in summary, one of the things I just immediately thought was just the size of the non-regulated market. It must be absolutely mammoth if you can absorb these positions. It doesn't really do much for people who say, "Well, the unregulated market isn't that big." Like it's we've seen these numbers from one operation. I think it probably is, lads. There's a case going on in the moment in Australia between the founder of Stake, I think he's called Ed Craven, and a chap, I think it's Bijan Terani. There's lawsuits. There's a 500 and something million Australian dollar claim at the moment. There's been WhatsApp messages produced between the two in relation to that claim, which are absolutely staggering. If they are genuine, and you think the unregulated market is of no threat, and some of the practices that go on in relation to that regarding consumers, it's worth everybody having a Google and having a look at those WhatsApp messages. And then to summarize as well, I think this is probably in the public domain, to try and embarrass somebody into paying money, essentially. And the fact that it's got this far suggests maybe it's past the point of embarrassment. And I am trying not to swear on this podcast, but this is a quote now, so I think I can get away with it. As Axe says to Chuck Rolls in Billions, what's the point of fuck you money if you can't occasionally say fuck you? So it'd be interesting to see how this develops anyway, and what the strategies of each legal team are, I suppose.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. As you say, the figures, whether regulated, unregulated, that these are just kind of floating around the ether. We don't know. I don't think we know how long these this money was earned over, but the allegation that I mean, there are hints in the particular claim. I haven't seen the particular claim, but I've read what everyone else is. There are hints to me that the particular claim have been drafted to cause as much embarrassment as possible. One of those hints is it refers to the background of George Cottrell, who of course was imprisoned in America for a while, I think in 2017, to do with allegations concerning fraud. That's not strictly relevant, I wouldn't have thought, to the particulars of claim, which are, as I say, really just kind of set out bare facts of a claim. And that's the sort of thing that might have been thrown in just to cause maximum embarrassment. But that's not an illegitimate tactic. People do that. But yeah, I think, there's probably huge pressure. There's a belief there would be a huge pressure on Star Lizard to settle this rather than face the embarrassment of it, I suppose.
Just finally, we're dealing with the quoted figures are 600 million in winnings, aren't they? Given the margins involved in football betting, the actual turnover must be astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely.
To arrive at 600 million pounds winnings.
I'd imagine so. It's mad you can even get that money down, even
get it back.
Yeah, well, I've spoken to people in that space previously, and there's a good bit of bad debt factored into that as well, as I'm sure you can imagine. For me, just personally, Tony Bloom and that operation, the absolute gods in the space. Like it impresses me no end.
Completely agree.
From a personal perspective, like it's absolutely unbelievable. There's an account on Twitter that pops up every now and then accusing me of being funded by Tony Bloom.
If only, yeah.
we might actually be able to do some marketing if that was the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get a presenter that doesn't just disappear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there you go. We'll see
that could be Fuck you, podcast money. I'm not doing this on a Monday morning anymore.
I wish. I'd love to meet him.
They've done unbelievably well, but one of the things they've done unbelievably well is that they've kept themselves to themselves. You know, that's been a
Yeah,
huge while becoming a very big deal. And that again is I should think part of the ammo that's being used against
definitely. Yeah,
them.
well, that's it. Discretion. What do they say? Discretion is the better part of valor, or something.
Valor,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's some operation. Just nothing but respect from me.
yeah.
Point two on our running order. Alice Haynes gives up training. More worrying signs for the sport is our subheading. So, in a statement on Thursday, Haynes said, "Tonight at Chelmsford, I was sad on my final runners as a trainer. It's a sentence I never imagined I would have to say. Sorry, I'm going to cough. Stepping away from something that
You
has
were
shaped
overcome
my
by
days."
emotion there, Rico.
Yeah. Stepping away from something that has shaped my days and captured my heart has been an incredibly painful decision. But the truth is that racing's current financial model does not make it viable for me to continue. So many people to thank, etc. Thanks to my partner Kieran O'Neill, who stood beside me through every moment of this chapter. What's next? I'm unsure of. Taking a step back to reflect and see where the next chapter leads. I'd love to stay involved in the sport. Sidebar to this is Hugh Taylor commented that there were over 250 trainers who have had at least 200 flat runners in the last 4 years. And Alice Haynes, who's probably on the back of not her best year, ranks in the top 40 in terms of winners out of those trainers. And it puts into perspective what a lot of stables must be facing, says Hugh. Echo that. Probably a good time to give another shout out to the very good Nick Luck Daily podcast who had Alice on. And I was going to make the observation after listening to that I was halfway through listening to her and I was like, Jesus, I wouldn't be the best at detecting female feelings then, but I was like, geez, she sounds very upset here as she's speaking, and then she did actually break down on that. It was a very very sad listen, for somebody who's obviously very talented and probably much better than the average at the job. I also think and it probably isn't might not be the time for her to realize this, but she's probably just ahead of the game again, stepping away. To be honest with you, and there's plenty of people who would bury their heads in the sand. I think so. Interested in what you guys think about this story. It's a pretty worrying story. Sorry, another sidebar would have been that she was sponsored by Coral Bookmakers. And there was quotes obviously after the budget that Coral were rolling back on a lot of the sponsorship or reconsidering it. I don't know how much of a part that would have played. And then, sorry, I'm waffling here now, but my other thought on it was she referenced bad debt in her interview with Nick, and that the BHA just don't do anything in relation to that and helping trainers, which is shocking in my opinion. And it seems that in a country where people are tightening their belts and being taxed to bejesus, doing something around bad debt feels like an absolute must, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I know Alice quite well and was aware that this was coming for a while. It's been an awful strain on her. I haven't actually heard the Nick Lack interview, although I knew she'd done it before she actually announced the interview. And she's been really upset by the entire thing. She's very upset about saying goodbye to her horses and to her yard. I don't think she's closed the door on ever coming back. But I think that one of the really grim realities of being a trainer at the moment, and again, it's just going to get worse with less money floating around the sport, is late payment. But it costs a fortune to keep these things on the road, and staff bill, rent, everything to do with the maintenance of the horses is huge. Very few of them make decent money doing it, and they just seem to be constantly. And it's so difficult to chase people for your owners for money, because of course you're also so grateful to them for the bill they are paying, for sending horses to you, and you don't want a reputation for for chasing, aggressively your owners for obvious reasons. And then you have, the bigger the yard, the bigger the problems, really. Then you have fallings out between owners in the same syndicates, and okay, then I'm not paying for this, I'm not paying for that, and that always ends up with as the trainer's problem. The trainer's getting up at 4:30 in the morning to start the day, and also having to deal with tons of issues, staff issues, and owners issues, and then the horses themselves getting into the races. It's a really it has become such a labor of love as to be untrue, and essentially, I don't think I may be wrong. Alice can correct me on this. I don't think Coral. I think the decision had been made before the budget, so I don't think the Coral sponsorship came into it. Although again, for all I know, she'd seen the writing on the wall on that front. But I think, as everyone said, if Alice Haynes, with the goodwill and the sort of image that she had, the belief that it's really important to realise that Alice comes not remotely from any kind of horse racing background. She just threw herself into the game at sort of 16 because she loved horses and became a very young trainer. She's very much helped by Kieran O'Neill, who is her partner and a really lovely guy, and helps a lot. But she's really built herself up from scratch. Remember, she had a lot of ammo. One of the first trainers to get lots of ammo horses, and she was flying. And it does beg the question, who can stay at this except for the absolute superstars who basically get all the owners with gazillions. The sport can't just only have sort of 10 trainers who attract Arab money and other money from the Middle East money and the sort of mega rich over here. There's got to be a model that allows the likes of Alice Haynes to thrive. And at the moment, it doesn't. As for the BHA not chasing, I don't actually know very much about that. Assisting with the training, chasing training fees. I think that the things that the BHA does and doesn't priorities sometimes are wrong. I think it could be better at that. Richard Hannon, do you remember they got involved on his behalf not very long ago, and they got some money out of a Qatari owner, I think, if I remember right. But then, I can tell you myself, my own experience with the BHA, that you just don't know how seriously they'll take anything, how much they'll help, how much they'll get involved. It can be a real lottery in terms and how quickly things will happen. So, I think
given the fact that the fast track cases can take 7 months, you'd be under before maybe they do get involved.
I've got nothing much to really add to that, but what I would say, I think this is probably a case where the National Trainers Federation must go in with one voice on the issue of bad payment, because why can't there be a situation like if you rent a property, for example, you ask for 3 months money up front or whatever. Now, I appreciate some owners wouldn't want to do that, but then that would be the red flag to that, wouldn't it? I mean,
I think that's the funny, that is rather what I was talking about earlier. That's the funny line that they have to walk, though, which is that particularly when you're starting out or you're trying to get into the black, they can't really take the risk of losing the owners that will say, no, I'm not giving you 3 months up front. They're really on the breadline. When you're on the breadline, there's that element of desperation that you take on owners that perhaps you shouldn't.
That's the reason why it should be a collective agreement from all trainers.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
if you can't circumvent that and go somewhere else, then you're going to have to pay up. But the only other sidebar to this was, I think it underlines the fallacy of the sport. All the money coming to the sport is being pumped to the top end. You've got the likes of Ascot and York announcing astronomical prize money at the top end. I think you have to have a more structured distribution of that. Now, I appreciate Ascot and the likes of York don't have lower class 5 or 6 racing to actually pump money into that end, but I just think this obsession with giving the Grand National extra prize money, the King George up to 2 million plus, etc.
Well, I wouldn't mind that if it was working. I mean, I think if that was growing the sport and getting people really getting more eyes on these big sports, I think that these big events, then I think that there would be justification for it. But it doesn't appear to be working doing it like that.
Yeah, if I mean, Alice Haynes, I mean, she's predominantly low grade trainer, but she did have
Middle of the
Cairo
road.
that finished third in the Queen Anne, winning 85 grand for that. I mean, she's not a predominantly, well, she is a predominantly a low grade class of horse trainer, but she does have some decent animals there.
But
I
also, I
just,
mean, where could she have got to? I mean, Alice is 33.
yeah,
Where could she have got to? Is what we haven't really just lost what is. We've lost what she could have become. Is really what we've lost, I
yeah,
think.
she came across incredibly well and very articulate in that Nick Luck interview. And like you said,
Yeah,
I think it was actually recorded. Nick had to sit on it for I think it's 3 or 4 days
Yeah,
before she
yeah.
told all her owners. But no, she came across really, really well, and I think
she's very good. I
anybody.
think she has some thoughts about going into sort of racing media. So hopefully that'll work out for her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that she probably did absolutely everything by the book. She built up from small, like you say. She's done everything, again, inverted commas, the right way. She's attracted owners, Ammo, Midland Park,
Mm.
like
Yeah, I
above.
forgot Midland Park. Yeah.
She must be like top for first 5 years from scratch. She must be right at the top of people who've over-indexed on where they probably expected to be. And
Mm.
if it's not viable, my God, there must be some people in absolute dire straits. I also think the BHA not touching the non-payment stuff, because I'd imagine it is a mindful to get a hold of in the first instance in the early days. But I always think the knock-on effect to that is there's just massive integrity concerns there where the small
Completely.
small trainer is owed money and he's being asked to do things to get paid. It's
As I said the other day, the knock-on effect of all this lack of money in racing, particularly at the bottom end, is it is a huge integrity issue and a huge reputational issue for the sport as well.
yeah.
yeah.
Next topic on the running order, gents. Betfred hit with an 825,000 sterling fine from the Gambling Commission for social responsibility and AML failures. I could give the background on this, but it's a very long thing. So I'll just get our resident,
Bore.
yeah,
Yeah.
to jump in here. Go on, Mr. Stewart.
So this is not. You're right. It's not a particularly interesting one. This is to do with their shop machines, B3 machines, and basically they didn't have systems on them that allowed them to do social responsibility or source of funds checks. They had a 3.25 million settlement for similar breaches or related breaches some time ago. And I think again, it just while these aren't great, I think thresholds at 15, setting thresholds at £15,000 of losses, and £125,000 of stakes in 365 days are high, bearing in mind that this is source of funds. And I think people have got a bit confused about this. That's the source of funds part of it. That's not. So people have been saying that's nothing to lose. That's hardly anything. That's only 40 quid a day or something. That's not the point. The point for these is when someone is spending 125 grand with you in a year, you do need to do some checks on where that money has come from if you're regulated. So I think those are, not hugely surprised that they've got into some trouble for this. Again, I'm sorry to repeat myself ad nauseam on this. I just think that, I advise bookmakers on what they need to do and help them come up with their policies and that kind of thing. And we're expected to learn from these things. And all we've learned here is that 15K is too high and 125K is too high in 365 days. Well, I think most people would have spotted that, frankly, off their own bat. They're just, while I accept that you can't just give people absolute thresholds for reasons we've discussed with people, it becomes far too easy for people to play the system if you set out public, known thresholds. And also that it depends on the circumstances. I still think that these breakdowns should just be so much more detailed and there should be so much more explanation as to what's gone on here. That's a pretty substantial fine. It's not as big as the previous one they got, and it's not William Hill sized. But if operators are seeing fines like that, I think they should really understand what it is that's gone wrong here, so that they can plan accordingly. But that the Gambling Commission continue to publish their penalties, as it were, like this, and I just think that all it does is is pose more questions than answers. This is not as bad as others. I want to be, straight about that. But it continues. Just the format for me just is not a sensible way. If you compare it to the BHA, for example, look at the BHA disciplinary panel finding. It's like a court document explaining exactly what's. They're not always right, and then in my view, and they're not always brilliant. But you most of the time you get a really good idea of what's gone on, how serious it is, and why it's been treated in the way that it has. And the Gambling Commission are 50 times the size and have, and frankly importance of the British Horse Racing Authority. And we get those documents. I just don't think they're, I know that the operator themselves gets a great deal more information, obviously. But the rest of it is just, it's all just too opaque.
Yeah, I think the shop, if this in relation to retail, it's obviously a little bit more tricky because people are dealing in cash, and tricky, I mean, as in the fact that there should be more onerous checks on cash and stuff like that. I always think with the online, I really don't want to speak out of turn because it's not a subject where I should just go off on one with my musings, and they're probably ill considered. And I have people in the company, our company, that are qualified in these respects. But I always just think, as a layman, speaking as a total layman, that when money's coming into a bank account, the checks are being done on the bank side, and then bookmakers and then doing those checks again on top of things. And I always think that like the onus is probably on. There's more of an onus on the bank in the initial stage, and they're far more probably qualified and staffed to be policing that stuff.
I mean, I think there's something in that, but I think also the way that the money is spent is also. You also got to be careful of that logic because so many banks. I was setting up a bank account for someone the other day, helping them set up a new business. Every single thing we looked at, one of the first questions it asks is, are you a gun runner? Are you are you involved in the trade of illicit substances? Number 3, are you involved in bookmaking? I mean, it's become astonishing. It's become astonishing. I don't know where everyone finds to bank, frankly, now. But
it's tough.
That's why I just think we want to be careful of the logic that the bank should be in charge of it, because their AML teams have got all the same problems, not perhaps quite as many problems as the AML teams in bookmaking, which are a long way behind everyone else. But the safest thing to do if you work in compliance and you're a little bit concerned is just red cross it.
I think that happens. Like I think that's just a natural. I just see the churn. I suppose just on the back end, I see the churn of customers that who, in all probability, are going to be fine. They're not going to be involved in anything nefarious. And I just see the massive churn of those customers and just think it's you're catching the needle in the haystack perhaps, and just burning the haystack at the same time.
I think it's a huge problem across the whole country is the approach to regulation that we have at the moment. It's becoming more and more onerous in absolutely everything. Yes, cyber risks and things make life much more complicated, and criminals get much more sophisticated and clever and able to do clever things. But at a certain point, you can't stop every criminal. And the difficulty that you're going to have eventually is that other jurisdictions are going to start being comparatively more competitive because it's easier to do business in those jurisdictions. And I sometimes wonder whether government policy takes that into account.
There we go. Next topic, gents. The Thirsk clerk of the course fined just 500 sterling for essentially hanging himself on the Bar Stewards podcast and making up going stick readings on the 12th of April 2025. Mr. Calvin.
Oh, I think you're muted, Tony.
You're on mute to the
I did a little comment. Yeah, I was pretty staggered that it was only £500, but as the BHA document said, it was there was an entry point of £250 for this kind of misdemeanor, as they say. So probably to be expected. Now, this was pretty extraordinary. Now, James Sanderson's he's also the general manager at Thirsk as well as the clerk of the course. So I don't know whether that played into what I think was a pretty kind of like lenient fine, but the NTF for it was very lenient as well. But so what actually happened is he doesn't believe in the going stick. On Thirsk on 12th of April, the going stick reading was 8.6. He didn't particularly like that, so he reported it on the BHA site at 7.6. So I think misleading would be a generous assessment of that. Yeah, it just goes to show. Yeah, like the £500 was lenient because he actually went further than that. He actually said, "Oh, a lot of other clerks of the course do it." Now, one clerk in the course actually contacted me last week. I won't actually say exactly what he said, but he wasn't particularly happy about the comments that were made by James Sanderson and the light it put certain clerks in. So I think there's a wider issue here.
He could have been done for bringing racing into disrepute. I think he could have been if they'd been
Wisely. I mean,
more aggressive.
and that seems the BHA summary. I called it up here. Um, they said, I have concluded that it's appropriate to resolve the matter by the way of the fast track procedure and to approve the agreed penalty of £500 for the following reasons. The prompt admission by Mr. Sanderson and his acceptance of the penalty has led to a saving in time and cost for the BHA. Mr. Sanderson's participation in the investigation has been open and candid. Well, it would be because he literally there is evidence of a podcast quoted him verbatim. So, and C, ultimately, the BHA does not consider that the information provided by Mr. Sanderson was misleading.
That's the most astonishing. That's astonishing, that third, but I completely agree. So the BHA accept that his taking 1 point off the going stick didn't change the accuracy of the going report is bizarre.
The staggering thing about the whole thing where his defense was, well, I think it's wrong, so I do my own. The staggering thing about it is what happens when you leave your job, mate?
Yeah.
And the next person pops up and everything's different. Like it's
and
it's a wholly staggering approach over numerous years and maybe even numerous tracks over his working history.
And the point the BHA made, and I'm amazed it wasn't made a bigger deal of, which was he wasn't returning data by the looks of things on the going stick itself. And of course, even if you don't think it's any good, if you've been doing it for 3 years solidly and putting the results up, there's a data set there that people can analyze and go, oh, well, that means a slightly different thing at Thirsk. 8.6 at Thirsk doesn't mean what it means at, York, whatever. But basically he liked sticking his stick in the ground and
he until he got a BHA letter in January, he didn't even bother to record a going stick reading half the time. And like you said, I'm a bit of a.
I think more than half the time, judging by the judgment. I think he didn't do it very much at all. Yeah,
it's like it's the one thing you said about a data set is because that you can go on the BHA site and actually just download all the going stick readings from any number of years and use it to qualify the going.
Yeah,
it's
I mean that
if the
said,
entry point is £250 for misleading. I think that needs to be reassessed because you can't have clerks of the course in a sport funded by betting and punters just making things up.
Yeah. I think in fairness to him, of course, though, he wasn't exactly trying to hide anything. I mean, he went on to the bar stewards and was very upfront about the whole thing. I think perhaps he was a little bit naive as to quite what that what the consequences of what he was saying meant. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to see this, particularly see people being hung out to dry in these circumstances. But that £500 does seem a little bit low. I wouldn't want to see him sort of seriously suffer as a result of this. But I agree, a rare view for me that someone's not got a strict enough penalty.
Yeah.
Interesting. Rightio. Next topic, gents. Identification mix-ups are far more common than you think. This is on the back of a piece by Vincent Finnegan of IrishRacing.com, who were very critical of AK Bets last month regarding the Twitter storm. So important to give them a plug here. If you're looking for a really crappy casino, IrishRacing.com have got you covered with their latest affiliate deals. So, hi, Vincent. Would you like to give the background on that, Tony?
Yeah, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And since that a case has been brought, I think Ender Bolger was fined £2,000 last week for that mix-up. Vincent has done some digging, and it transpires it is not uncommon. Now,
Is this on both sides of the Irish Sea, or
no, just in Ireland, but I'm not sure. It'd be interesting. I'm actually asked the BHA actually what goes on over here.
yeah?
But the bullet points I've got from his article was the IHRB only carries out second microchip scans when resources are available, which I find absolutely staggering.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever taken your dog to a vet and they do their code. It's like a tiny little scanner.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be a very similar. The idea that there aren't the resources to have a scanner at each course does seem pretty extraordinary.
Well, if you've
Could you not do it at the weighed in bit and weighed out? Like, could the guy doing the weighed in and weighed out bit not just fucking
but if you, like you said, if you're doing one microchip test, you've got a guy there. So, to do a second one would be what, an extra couple of minutes? It's just staggering. But apparently there was a similar case at Dundalk on November the 5th. And that is the third time the last 12 months that John O'Connell has been in this situation by sending the wrong course.
Maybe he doesn't really know who his horses are. Maybe he's got problems at the yard where he just doesn't know who to.
But Alice Haynes can't keep training horses she does know. And these lads are just sending random
ponies from the farm next door. Yeah.
Well, that might explain every time I do my trainer form stats, John O'Connell is always in the moderate 2% range. So perhaps he should place his miscommunication a bit better. And this is another thing that I find it staggering because, like I said, we are dealing with a sport that integrity is paramount. A second microchip test only happened at 25% of Irish meetings. Now, and these are cases. So I think there's been 15 instances identified. Oh, sorry, nine have been identified in the last 12 months. How many? You're a stats and figures man, Anthony. I mean, if tests are only happening at 25% of the time, the second time, how many horses have run and won that we don't know about? I mean, if a trainer is so minded, skulldugger, etc., and they identify a track where second tests are never done, and there is a very high percentage chance of them getting away with purposely sending the wrong horse to a track in order to land a gamble. I just find it absolutely staggering in this day and age.
The way my perverse brain works now, but you could probably, if there was an 8-race card at Navan and 35-minute gaps between races, you could probably have a runner in the first and a runner in the last and just see if there's a scan going on in the first.
Yeah.
and then bring some horse 3 hours, still 3.5 hours before the race to the track, knowing there's no scanner, and bring a random horse to the track, couldn't you? It's I'd be very wary of extrapolating from small samples now, but I'd imagine it's a bigger issue than even that extrapolation would suggest. I just don't understand why you couldn't do it at the weighed in and weighed out stage. It can't be that difficult to fully resource something that's such integral for.
Jockeys have to weigh in and weigh out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary.
I found it a staggering piece. I'll email the BHA later and just ask them what their stats are on this.
It's fairly embarrassing as well for the people caught up in it.
I'd love, how they do like stable yard tours at the beginning of the season. Love the idea. Go to a yard tour. That trainer's going, and who's this? Well, it's either.
Yeah, just say.
Yeah.
This horse ran in that horse's name last year, but he did it very well.
Brilliant. Next topic, Toby Young. There was a story in 365. Now, our running order, not that I'm slagging the running order now, says sent by Harry on WhatsApp on Wednesday. I remember the story. I remember he was wanted to cash out at a price he didn't even know was, which made me. It was just an
Yeah,
interesting
I'd say
observation.
Bet365 would have had the better of him in the course of that relationship if it
Yeah,
had continued.
yeah. It's a shame they've lost him as a customer after
Yeah.
the story, I suppose. But yeah, it's what do we think of that story?
Well, I just think it's the modern age, isn't it? So, just for those who haven't seen it, there may be people who don't read The Spectator listening to this podcast. He was actually the same QPR game as I was, and against Hull the other day, and he placed a bet on the way there. He opened a 365 account on the way, got the money in, got the bet on. He backed QPR to win. In fact, Hull won 3-2, but he got out of the bet at half time when Hull were 2-1 up. And he won, I think, about sort of 50, 60 quid. And then when he went to withdraw it, they said, you're a politically exposed person, which is a relatively new regulatory thing, which we all have to deal with, which is people who have connections with power. He sits, I hadn't actually quite realized this, but he sits in the House of Lords. I should have known that.
Yeah.
And because he did lots of stuff with schools, I think, if I remember rightly. And he said, "Well, I'm not giving you that information, and therefore, I'm just going to say goodbye to the money because it's intrusive." Now, it's slightly hard to understand whether what he's complaining about is the whole concept of politically exposed persons, which is not Bet365's fault. He would definitely meet the criteria. He's about A1 for the criteria if you sit in Parliament for a particularly exposed person. But what he was saying was, well, they shouldn't have taken my money in the first place. But another way of looking at that, I suppose, is would you have rather, when you were on your way to Loftus Road from Acton, would you have rather they'd said then, well, if you want to get this bet on, you need to send us all this information, and he just wouldn't have been able to do it, wouldn't have been able to get the bet on. So is it better that he was able to get the bet on and then they asked him afterwards? Or would it have been better if they'd asked him at the time? It'd probably be more straightforward if they'd asked him at the time. And I can see a sort of
I can
but
see why
yeah,
they're annoyed by it, to be honest with you. I think I should probably have clarified our policy prior to this, but my understanding is in the whole history of AK bets, we've had one person who flagged as a PEP, politically exposed person. And I think that flag, which is returned from, I don't even know how they do it. It's a general
yeah,
database
there's a public data,
query.
there's a specialist database, I think.
Yeah, when it flags, my understanding is that our system puts a customer restriction on the account just
Straight away. Yeah,
straight away.
it makes a lot more sense, but
Yeah,
I can also see that you would be. I mean, it's just quite an odd story. Why was he setting up a Bet365 account for the first time on his way down to QPR? It's a bit weird thing to have done. And I just sort of can see how people, if he hadn't been allowed to, and they'd say, sorry, you're a politically exposed person, then he'd have written the same article going, oh, Bet365 are ridiculous for not letting me get a bet on the way to football because I'm supposed to be a particularly politically exposed person. I think it actually goes back to the point I was making earlier. Of course, you've got to have regulations like this, but
yeah,
wouldn't it be nice to live in a world where someone could go, well, that's obviously not someone who's a risk, even if they are a particularly politically exposed person. We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to either as lawyers.
yeah.
But a 25 quid bet QPR Hull is not someone who is getting involved in bribery and corruption and money laundering.
And also he must know there's a wider picture. I mean, the court case is still going on with the date of the general election betting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a good
So
point.
he must know that this politically exposed person
That
catches.
said, but I don't think he was privy to the result of QPR Hull before the game started, as they could have been in theory in
Yeah,
the election one. But yeah,
it's
no, you're quite right.
given his background and very dodgy tweets
I think it was a
before.
bit. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was a bit
I'm
unfair
I'm
to give
amazed. Yeah,
365 a kicking for that,
I'm
particularly.
amazed.
But
I'm amazed he's in the House of Lords, but just goes to show.
he was the one that did he reinvented himself as like as a reasonable person, didn't he, Toby Young? Because when he wrote that book, was it How to Lose Friends and Alienate People,
Yeah.
which was about his sort of lunatic hedonism days, I think in
Uh,
America, wasn't it?
yeah, I was more referring to his tweets about certain females in certain situations,
Oh, I
etc.
don't know about those.
Oh no, if you Google Toby Young and
Oh, really?
Yes, Twitter. It's quite the thing. But yeah, he's in the House of Lords now, so
Yeah.
shows you how to get on. But
Says
no,
Michelle Mone, or has Michelle Mone left? I think she might have left. But yeah, I don't think being in the House of Lords is a particular accolade nowadays. But there we go.
There we go. And then our final story was a self-made one, I suppose, with Irish betting rings seniority listings. It's a slightly niche topic. We won't delve into it too much, but there was an AGM in March, I believe, last year. Sorry, this year, 2025 is the AGM in March. A motion proposed by myself regarding listing betting ring seniorities and the history of them for when they go into corporate areas, so people have an understanding of when they can move into corporate areas and when they're next due around. I proposed that they become public knowledge. They were just known by certain members of the committee, essentially. And that was seconded and passed. And then our Bookmakers Association decided that there was a data protection issue on some advice, and they said that they received, which we haven't been able to obtain from them, that they couldn't do that from a data protection issue, which we have queried, or I have queried. A few bookmakers not happy with it, and there's been we sent them a few questions, didn't we, Tony?
yeah,
last week.
yeah, I sent them a quite exhausted list of questions on the subject to the two parties involved. The responses back were minimal, and said they were, because I'm not a member of the Irish bookmaking or Irish bookmakers. Unsurprisingly, they didn't think I was worthy of a detailed response. But I gave them another opportunity on Friday. Pat Brennan got back to me and said there was nothing really more to add, but he's looking forward to the podcast. And I'm not sure if there was any ramifications that came back on the back of that. Anthony, was there any movement in the information given?
Well, there's obviously, this was voted through in March last year. There's been an impasse up until November, essentially. Quite a few bookmakers weren't just happy with it, basically because of and it's probably only perceived now, but the perceived advantage of some people on the committee being able to see these lists and strategize their own participation in the corporate areas. One thing I will point out is that, like, listen, this is probably a tough question to ask, and you're doing it publicly, but like the people on the committee, I've got plenty of respect for the people in the bookmaking division at HRI, Pat and Frank as well. I think we've fairly good relationships with them all. I just don't understand why the committee. There's talk, and I never really find out what goes on because I'm not on the committee, but apparently there was a meeting at the start of November where 6 people voted for publishing the list and 6 voted against, and they decided that because it was a tie that they weren't gonna do it. Essentially, I don't know under what system that occurs, but and then we've asked questions, and then lo and behold, this week they've started fully publishing backdated corporate seniorities from every track, basically. So it's essentially took us asking questions, and I just think a committee that does a really, really good job. I have a lot of respect for pretty much everybody on the committee and the time and effort they put into various things. It just didn't make any sense that they were just withholding this information from members to me, and it's a shame that it's taken to December for that information to come, basically. But we move on to the questions section of the podcast. We have a couple of questions this week. I'll start off with a question from Timmy Birchall. Less of a question, so we don't start with a question. More an observation. I know it's a well-worn topic, but how can anybody look at field sizes at Sandown and Aintree and think that everything is fine? Mr. Calvin.
I don't think anybody thinks it's fine at all, but everyone just have to put a brave face on it. This weekend, I had one bet on Saturday and Sunday on horse racing, which is unheard of, mainly because most of the fields were 4, 5, 6 runners. It's a massive problem, but if you're a race course, if you're the BHA, like I said, they have to put a brave face on it, but they know it's a far from ideal situation, and what a situation that's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Next question is from Pieman8. Does AK fancy putting up some money to get Rochdale's pitch sorted out? Twice Southend have been up there this season, and twice the game has been called off. Is it petty revenge for last season's playoffs? Yeah, Rochdale's pitch is actually starting to be ripped up. I believe it might be today. It's we have to play 2 home games away from home.
That's where Ronan is. He sent it there with a spade.
Yeah. Pieman is probably quite lucky that game was called off in the 77th minute. Well, Rochdale were winning 2-1. But yeah, our pitch is fairly atrocious. I've actually played on it a few years ago. Scored on it as well, I'll have you know.
He should know by now you're selling pitches, not buying them.
That is very good. It's a horrific pitch. It actually looks all right when you're walking out onto it, and then
how much do you think it would cost to buy Rochdale? Out of interest, have you any idea?
Oh God, I could go into this. This is a good story now.
Let's do it properly another time. Okay, I think we're on. Yeah,
okay,
we'll do it next week. We'll do it as a special.
Okay, grand. Go on. I have a very detailed answer to that, but you might enjoy it actually. Yeah. Andy Crawford, has the panel had any dealings with Mr. Bloom? Nothing in that article we didn't know, but how on earth does he get his bets on and paid out? I haven't had any dealings with him, never met him, and I'd love to meet him. So this is my plea to Mr. Bloom to invite me to dinner sometime. And
sounds like he's got enough problems. Okay, thank you for that.
I'll even come to a Carling Cup match if there's an invite going.
That's one football betting syndicate you want to be in on, isn't you?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, we should ask about any movement on the other one, actually, shouldn't we? I met him once. He took a tour around Betfair must have been the summer of 2002. They showed him around the building and stuff like that, and the telephone betting team, and he met a few people. So I've met him once, but that was only. It was only a hello, I think, if that.
Very good. I genuinely would love to understand their operation more, and I'm always fascinated myself, to be honest with you, with the strategy of getting bets on, and that used to take up a lot of my time previously, and trying to optimize strategies to actually get down money. So that had probably even interested me more than the sourcing of how they source the bets, to be honest with you. But alas, I don't know. Maybe if maybe in a future life, maybe. Stephen Bayliss, question for AK: what are the top 5 largest turnover and top 5 most profitable elements for online bookmakers? Also, does the casino element make more for the masses of small stakes players or the high rollers? And then there's a question for you in a second, TC, but I'll answer that one first. Largest turnover. I presume you mean sports or casino, essentially. How would you answer that? Sports. Our sports margin is overall, as a collective of absolutely every sport, is double figures. It's probably in and around the 10% range. The difference is every single sport probably has a different cost base, which is why you always hear me moaning about horse racing, I suppose, from a bookmaking point of view, and how it's very difficult because the cost base is so high. Some sports are going to be a hell of a lot less from a cost base perspective, so naturally they're probably more attractive. The casino side of the business, again, it depends how you cut it up. Casino margin over a year annualized is probably in and around the 2.5% range. So it's a lot less from a margin perspective. People talk about whether it's easier or not for a bookmaker to win on casino. It's probably more guaranteed, you might say, over the long term, because it's a built-in RTP rates and that kind of thing. But you're obviously susceptible to a big hit in one go for a small amount of money, I suppose, which is the real. I suppose you're always sportsbooks, but casino, it always feels a little bit more out of your hands. Even as an operator, people think it's the absolute pinnacle of just free money, but it's not that way. I always remember, actually, it was less than a month into AK Bets Online, and this might sound like a small amount to somebody, but we just set up, and I was essentially employee one and still on my own essentially. And at the start of April, some fella won 56 grand overnight on casino, and it's still the first thing I do when I wake up every morning is to check the casino report. I literally usually get up around 7 a.m. and I roll over, open the phone, and open the casino report and make sure I'm not broke essentially. And so it works both ways from an operator and punter point of view, I'd say. But there was a particular morning, April 2023, and some fella won 50, I think it was 56 grand from like a £5 spin on the casino. And I swear, I was so sick. So it was like, it's like the two different sides of the coin, I suppose. So that answers that, I think. He also has a question for you, TC. As Brit-based trainers swerve the Irish at Cheltenham in March, I think we can guess which country this gentleman's from. Even after winning good races leading up, would a more extensive bonus offer encourage runners, especially with the novices, and just know that no drama this end will wait for entry? I don't understand.
I think, look, you're dealing with owners, big owners, where money is largely irrelevant. They're paying, 500 grand plus for horses that are about a hundreds on chance, never to recoup that kind of money. So money in horse racing at the top end is pretty much irrelevant, the prize money factor. And if you get questionable bonuses involved, no, I don't think it'll have any impact whatsoever.
Very good, very good. I've actually just thought of a sidebar to Stephen Bayliss's question as well. This will bore everybody, but like casino and live casino is different as well. Live casino is lower margin typically, even still than casino. So that's a slight sidebar. It depends how you keep it.
It reminds me, your answer there reminds me of this story that Harry Finley always used to tell. He said when he used to have 100 grand on Federer at 102 every single match. He said it's like the postman knocking on my door and giving me 2 grand every morning until the day where he knocks on the door and asks for 100 grand because he's just been chinned.
Yeah,
but it's I don't think anybody's going to be crying any tears for you over the 56 grand. I think you're still marginally in front on the casino business.
That's who we are. Yeah. Funny Federer story. My dad had never been to a tennis match before, and I don't know how long ago it was. It must have been 10 years ago. I bought tickets for the end of season, the O2, the end of season championships for the men's final, and made a big hoo-ha about it for my dad's birthday, and brought my dad and my mum down from Manchester, and I flew over with the missus, and we had a day out in London, and then went to the tennis final. And about 10 minutes before he started, he pulled out injured. And it was the second time he'd ever withdrawn before a match in 14 years or something like that. And I was just like, oh my God, I just literally sat through a Nicholas Mahou doubles match and then waiting for this. I think it was Federer Djokovic.
Was it the Royal Albert Hall?
No, it was at the O2, I think.
All right.
I think it was at the O2. Oh, it was absolutely sickening. But there you go. And then the final question, good liberal, 2016. Interesting years now. Have we ever had an answer on how SPs are calculated? Do they take online best price from Flutter and Skybet, or do they take independents as well? And if so, who? Do they take a feed from all bookmakers in the UK and Ireland to establish the best prices? I actually spoke to Nick Rust about this, and I can't remember the specifics, but I believe there's 7 or 8 bookmakers in that SP sample. They're not. I think the weighting of them is if Powers and Skybet, they don't get 2 weightings, they get 1 weighting essentially, and I'm not sure how it exactly works from memory. But there's about 7 or 8 different firms, I believe, in that sample. I think one of the issues that they have is extra places suppressing prices. I think in the old SP returning days, I think Simon Knott used to be involved in returning the SP with the PA from the track when it was done from the track. And from memory, even from when I worked for other firms in the industry, if a bookmaker, for example, at the track was win only, so it's the other way, not extra places. Say if they went win only on a bad each way race or something like that, they would be excluded from the sample. So every firm that was in the sample was offering the same each way terms because it was done off track. And I think that's probably where you're getting some kind of suppression of prices of some firms doing extra places, and then they can't offer, inverted commas, a fair win price for win only bets because they have to factor in the each way part of the bet for extra places. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are coming from. I think some of the smaller firms are doing like amalgamation of prices and then spitting out a feed price just from a resource perspective. And I think then they can't be included in samples because it's not their own price essentially as well. It's an amalgamation of prices that are probably already in the SP feed.
Yeah.
So it's probably an imperfect solution at the moment. And I think there was a couple of SPs at the weekend that caught people's attention. And
yeah, I was just about to say that KenBet flagged up that they were 7 on their board about Mr. Vango at the off, and it returned 9-2. And there was a discussion on Twitter about that. And there's increasing, disquiet about some of the SPs that returned as regards what has been offered on course. But, but I'm sure in the old days,
you get better prices on course. Like they have the benefit, obviously, of a lower cost base. If I was KenBet and if I'm operating with my on-course bookmaker hat on, and especially if my business was 100% on course, I'd love that because it's a huge USP for me.
Yeah.
Like, so it's I always find it weird that they complain about that. I understand if you're a punter where you'd complain about it, but if you're an on-course bookmaker, you should love it. I've been trying to get the on-course bookmakers to publish their own SP in Ireland for about 2 years, saying it's the biggest USP you'll ever have. Stop sponsoring races. It's an absolute waste of money. And publish your own SP.
Yeah, I'm sure in the old days it was far from perfect as well when you have the likes of Neil Wilkins going around all bookmakers with a massive cigar in his mouth, returning the SPs. I think he's passed away now, unfortunately, but I'm sure he also used to sell a tissue to all the bookmakers beforehand, as well as returning the SP. I always thought there was maybe a possible conflict of interest there, but yeah, I mean, I think both sets of analysis is open to manipulation, possibly.
Yeah, agree with that. So there you go. That's an episode of the Racing Room. Apologies, you've had to hear too much of me this week, and we'll try and source a host for next week, whoever he or she may be. Thanks for listening. I'll give a mention to the Big Prices tab again. Do a Ronan. Big Prices tab. Have a look.
I hope you're not going to moan at Ronan all week because you had to host.
He'll have to come in first.
No.
No, I'm only joking. All good. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.